If you listened to last week's show, you heard our guest Keith Brooks talk about the nightmarish Dogman encounter he had while he was digging a cave as a kid. While on that show, I asked him several questions, but there are several more I wanted to ask that I didn't have time to ask him. With that in mind, I asked him about coming back on to answer those questions, and luckily he agreed. So, let's bring him on here now. Keith, thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Wouldn't have it any other way. On last week's show, you told us that you planned to head back to the location where that encounter happened. Did you ever go back?
Right. No, I haven't gone back yet. We've had some rainy weather and kind of lack on transportation, and I'm not real keen on going back in there alone right now. But sometimes, I let my better brain get the better half of me and start thinking aggressively. So I'm going to wait probably about 2 weeks until I can get maybe Stovall or somebody like that can go back in there with me.
Can't say I blame you for wanting to have company when you go back in there.
Well, yeah, just, somebody to haul the body out.
Hopefully it won't come to that.
Well, I hope not, but you never know.
Yeah, you never do. From our conversations, I think I learned quite a bit about you there, Keith, but here's something I just can't figure out about you. After having that experience you guys had with that Dogman that night, why in the world would you want to go back?
I think there's two reasons. Number one, that it's still there. And number two, that we were not just fantasizing all this stuff. Because you got to remember, man, this was 30 some odd years ago? I'm 54 now. This happened when I was 13, 14. And just, it's like nostalgia. Maybe it's going back to your high school reunion or something. Something like that, maybe, perhaps. I don't know. I don't think it's going to hurt me.
You never know. You talk about any example from every type of species out there. You're going to have rogues that are dangerous to be around, so you never really know about that.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I don't think I'm going to take my dog out there because I don't want it being a snack.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Another thing I just can't wrap my mind around is, after having that encounter that night, you and your buddies kept on going back. Why in the world did you do that?
Well, like I was trying to emphasize on that, for a bunch of young men or children of that age, well, it depends on what era I guess you come from. Call them young men, boys, whatever. What we were doing there, we invested so much time in this thing. By the time we got finished, this thing was probably about 50 feet under the ground. And we had, three rooms, three major rooms, and two major hallways. So, you got to remember, we were out there 10, 12 hours a night, every night doing this. So it became, I guess, probably you would call it an obsession. Maybe even an addiction.
It sounds like it. And I can understand what you're saying there about having a lot of time invested in digging that cave, but when you think about it, you had 14 years invested in growing up from the point of being a newborn to the point that you were at, being 14 years old. What if that came crashing down into an end because this thing decided to snuff you out like a match?
Well, for whatever reason, we weren't terribly worried about that for some reason. We were at the moment when it showed up, but you got to remember, there's a lot of time between the times that it would show up and it wouldn't show up. So the times that it didn't show up were just perfectly fine. The times it did, that was total terror. I guess it's just being stupid and playing with gasoline, because teenagers are stupid. I hate to say that, but they are. I was stupid. I'm still stupid.
Boys do dumb things. I was no different. I did a lot of dumb things and continue to do a lot of dumb things. So, yeah, I can't say anything about that.
Is there something I could add to that I really wanted to add last time?
By all means, please do.
If there's some young boys out there, or young girls, or young folks, please do not go out there and dig a cave, because the thing within itself is dangerous. So You don't know when that thing's going to fall on you. Dogman, who cares about that? You got several tons of dirt falling on you. You're probably going to die. So just don't do that. Build a tree house.
Yeah, it's a lot safer. At least most of the time it is. Several people have sent messages asking if you've ever considered the possibility that Dogman paid you guys a visit to get you out of that situation, a dangerous situation where it realized that cave could have caved in on you, but apparently you guys didn't.
It never crossed my mind. You mean kind of like Mothman being some kind of advisor or some kind of bearing a fate or something like that, like the bridge is going to cave in, that kind of thing?
In a way, yes.
I don't think this king cared about us like that. It wasn't very nurturing. No. At least that was the impression I got. Now, I mean, I could be completely wrong, but once again, I'm more in the dark than I am in the light when it comes to the subject.
I'm pretty sure you're right about that. If it was doing that to try and frighten you out of the area so that you wouldn't have a cave possibly cave in on you, that's borderline altruistic behavior, and Dogmen normally just don't operate that way, so I've got serious doubts that that was what was behind his behavior.
Yeah, it kind of is. It really is, and I don't think these things function on that same level. I don't think they're really concerned about your feelings or your welfare. I just don't think so. If anything, what I think is we were in the way of it getting from point A to point B, being its feeding ground or its line of moving from one area to another. That's what I think. But, what do I know?
Anything's possible, but I highly doubt that was the case, because if it wanted to get from point A to point B and you guys were kind of in the way, then it always could have circumvented you and it never would have lost much time and you never would have known it was there. So I think it paid you that visit to shake you up, and that's pretty much the only reason why, in my opinion.
I think you're right about that. And I also think that, well, I've said it before, I said it last week, the thing lives on fear. And I think we were its play toy.
Yeah, no argument for me on that. If you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot shows, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know. You said the woods where that encounter happened was only about an acre or so in size. Did one of the tunnels that you told us about that runs under the city of Memphis have an entrance that dumped out into those woods?
Yes. To the north of where the cave was, it dumps out into a drainage ditch, which that drainage ditch runs down to Nonconna Creek. And Nonconna Creek is kind of a filter of a whole bunch of different drainage ditches, just like that one.
So there was one just to the north. How far from that cave that you dug was that entrance?
Let's see, probably about, I'd say 100 feet.
Oh.
In a heavily wooded area at the time. I haven't been back there in 20 years, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that area, but I can tell you what it used to be.
Wow, 100 feet, yeah, that's really close then. You described that Dogman's fur as being kind of tannish, whitish, orangish in color. Did it look filthy or pretty clean?
It looked pretty clean, but you got to diffuse that between time, how long ago it was, and also the light that we saw it in was a campfire light. So, it's not like I got a spotlight on it or something like that, if that makes any sense.
Oh, by all means it does. Yeah, you're just worried about saving your 6 at the moment. You weren't concerned about taking notes on his fur or anything like that.
Well, it's a little more than that. It's not only worried about saving your what, but it's also, what are we looking at? It's complete and total shock and confusion because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not logical. A beaver or a raccoon or anything like that, I could probably understand. Like I said, we'd rack our brains over. It's just got to be one of our friends in some kind of suit. They're out there just messing around with us because they know we're out here and we care about this thing. And But that wouldn't make sense either because of how tall it was and how it moved. So it wasn't some kind of something in a suit. It was something that was real, or at least tangible.
Yeah, sounds to me like it was the real thing. No doubt about that. Considering the repeated visits it paid you, cell phones weren't around back then, but Polaroids and Kodak cameras were. Did you ever think about taking a camera with you whenever you'd go back to dig more?
I didn't. I don't know why. I mean, we never looked for tracks. We never looked for any of that kind of stuff. We just couldn't figure it out. And that was, I think we were so baffled by the situation that was paramount in our brain as to what this thing was. So it wasn't like, this is long before, well, I wouldn't say long before, but at least long before in my mind about documentation and recording evidence and verifying and classifying and anything like that. So we were just freaked out. And like I said, I honestly didn't know if this was a physical thing, some weird kind of mutant that lived under the city, or if this was some kind of spiritual thing, like my cousin said, because we disturbed the ground and it just showed up. So there was all these questions. And, over the years, I've come to my own conclusions, especially because of your show. I don't think there's another Dogman show out there, as far as I know of, at least not one this good. And after hearing everybody talk about this thing, I'm like, aha, that's what this was. So those are the conclusions I come to. And the conclusion I come to on that is that this thing is a physical thing. It's not a spiritual thing. It's not a manifestation of some kind of paranormal kind of thing that just popped up out of the air. I think this thing is an actual physical thing. But that's my thought.
Playing the devil's advocate here, if these guys are flesh and blood creatures, how would you explain the cases where so many credible eyewitnesses come forward and report having an encounter in one state, and then they go home 2 states away, and then about a week later, the same Dogman shows up at their home?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what this modus operandi is for this thing, because that's why I still feel the way I felt before, that this thing lives on fear. And I think it's always there, but you don't see it. And I think that should be really emphasized, that you don't see it until it wants you to see it. And I think it's that stealthy, and I think it's that good of a hunter, and I think it's that much of an apex predator that we don't even have a clue as to how to deal with this thing. But with your 7 words and your wisdom and the wisdom of your past guest, for the most part, I can't think of a time or any episode or any experience where I hear this thing actually physically hurting someone. So what does that tell you?
Well, over the years I've been doing this, there have been 6 or 7 credible eyewitnesses who told me about being attacked by the Dogman they encountered. Now, that's going to make you real, but yeah, out of thousands, that's right.
Right. I mean, if you do the logical research on that, or statistical research, you're probably going to get attacked by a chicken more than you are the Dogman.
That's a good point.
Or a wild hog, or a wild dog, feral animals, that kind of thing. So whatever this thing is doing, it knows what it's doing. And that's why I keep saying that this thing lives on fear, because it gets a rise out of you. And it's like it enjoys getting a rise out of you. So once again, I'm a deist by nature, so I don't know. I don't know. And there's power in the words, I don't know. When you say the words, I don't know, that is a powerful statement, because you're saying that I don't know, but I can know. So I think there's hope that we can find out what this is. And by its actions and everything I've heard in past reports about this thing, it really is a terrifying, menacing beast that gets off on your fear. You know, it's not like a hominoid like Bigfoot just sitting out in the woods and you might see it, maybe. And I think it works in that realm of nightmares. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe that's its MO for attack, or maybe that's its MO for hunting. But I mean, there's been so many accounts as far as this thing. You know, I remember one of your shows that just blew me away, where it attacked a bull, and the bull was in the barn. It could have killed the bull in the barn, could have ate the bull in the barn, but it had to pull the bull out to where everybody could see it, rip it to pieces. Why would you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm not saying you're wrong. I want to make sure you understand that, but I just want to pose a question for you. You said that you're pretty sure they're flesh and blood creatures, just ordinary animals, but you also said that you think they feed off of fear, which every indication is that they do. If they do feed off of fear, no other animal does that. So wouldn't that point towards them being supernatural?
That's a good point. I can run with that. I mean, it's possible, but it could also be possible that it's a different breed of animal that works in a completely different way as far as hunting. If you have any cats, or any of your audience have cats, they will tame a bird. Matter of fact, my cat just caught a bird today. I had to get it out of its mouth because it's spring and we got baby birds. But they will hypnotize a bird. They make funny noises, and they will hypnotize a bird, and they will look at that bird in its eyes until that bird becomes totally unaware, and then they pounce. So maybe this is a hunting tactic. Maybe it's something instinctive that it's natural, ingrained in that animal within itself. I don't know. Once again, I don't know. But I find it extremely weird that a lot of these stories have the same kind of baseline. The encounters might be different, but the way it moves, the way it looks, the way it thinks, how it causes fear, maybe that's a tactic. Maybe that's an instinctive tactic in this animal. I mean, that's, I would like to think that's a reasonable question.
Oh, sure it is. Just imagine if we somehow had the ability to study these guys. Just imagine how long it would take us to actually figure them out. It would take forever.
Well, I mean, you know, from a scientific point of view, there's no way you could figure this out unless you had a body. And yeah, even if you had one, how are you going to contain it? You're talking about something that can take a fully grown bull and throw it over a fence. Where are you going to lock that up at? What kind of drugs are you going to hit that with to calm it down? I mean, that's going to be some serious elephant trunk. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't understand this. Maybe we never were meant to understand this, because I think that you're dealing with something on its level, and we can't function that way. I think it's seen when it wants to be seen. That doesn't mean it's not always there. I think it's seen and felt when it wants to be seen and felt. Could that be a spiritual thing? It could be a spiritual thing. You know, I don't know.
If we did somehow magically have the ability to study these guys as they were alive, out and about doing their thing, I think we'd wind up with more questions than answers, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's where we're at now. How many people have seen this thing, and how more common is this becoming where people are starting to talk about this thing? Bigfoot's been around since, I guess, the 50s as a Patterson film or whatever it is. But, you know, I mean, how long we've always had reports of Dogman. We just never understood it because we're not paying attention to things like skinwalkers and stuff like that. And maybe it's a werewolf. I don't know. Maybe it is a shapeshifter, but I don't think so. I think it's a breed unto itself. I just think it's, if you ever saw the movie Predator, that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. On last week's show, you told us about the Genesis room. You said that was the first room in that cave that you dug. How big was the Genesis room, though? Because you said that you, John, and Bear all hid from that Dogman in the Genesis room.
Let's see. I'm trying to think what would be good. I'm trying to look around at something. I'm looking around my room, trying to think of a good dimension. It'd probably be about 6 by 8 feet as far as width, and it'd probably be about 8 feet tall. You could probably shove 5 people down in that room if you wanted to.
You could have put 5 people in there, it sounds like, but I'm sure when that Dogman was out and about, it was pretty cramped down there, especially having to spend so much time down there.
Well, yeah. To reiterate on that one thing, I used to have a spade that we dug the cave with, and that spade was so sharp. I don't know if you know too much about shovels, but if you keep using them, they hone a blade on them. So I had a spade. It didn't even have a handle. I would just use it in one hand and dig. So I had that, and John had not a spade, but a regular shovel, and we're sitting at the entrance to the cave down in the Genesis room, which the Genesis room went down about, the entrance was open on the side of the cave, and the entrance was probably about 3 feet wide. And then once you got in the cave, the room actually broadened out. We had carved candle niches, and, we had candles down there and all that stuff. So there's really only room at that entrance for 2 people with a shovel. So anything that was coming in was definitely going to get cut. It would probably killed us, but we would have gone down with a fight. And Bear, on the other hand, and Bear's taller than any of us. Bear's like, how tall is Bear? He's probably about 6'3", big dude. And like I said, he peed himself, and his legs were quivering so hard, you thought he was going to have a heart attack. Me and John, it was just a question of fight or flight. It's like, okay, we're in this. We're going to do this. Whatever it is, we're going to do it. I don't know what it is. We're going to do it. And that's a whole lot of an adrenaline rush to shove on a 13, 14-year-old,
Oh, it is. Yeah, that's one heck of a rush to shove on a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And, you don't know what you're looking at. Is this a dream? What is this? My first thought, and it's still my thought, is that whatever this is some kind of mutant thing, and it lives in the sewers. That was my thought, because we were so close to that entrance that goes under the city of the drainage ditches. And I made a mistake last week by calling it sewers, but it's not really a sewer. It's a drainage ditch. And it's drainage that comes from all the gutters and all the rainwater that goes down in the city in suburbia or normal Memphis or normal any city. So, yeah, somebody pointed that out to me, and they said, it's not a sewer system. It's a drainage ditch. I was like, you know what? You're right. Yeah, that is a drainage ditch. And I'll tell you something. That creek was a really strange place. I said that before, and I'll say it again. That creek, with all that water, especially in the fall and in the spring, where I live in Memphis, in this general area, it rains a lot. So this time of year, or around this time of year, we get this massive amount of water. It really doesn't even have to be that much, because it's all filtered to that creek, which is Donkana Creek. So that creek, the water level of that creek will rise. And you wouldn't believe, it would come up to almost our backyard, that high. It would get to the point to where it was like a raging whitewater river. And, there's sometimes we'd be out there looking at it, and here comes a canoe or a kayak with 4 or 5 people in it, just going, yeehaw, and riding down these white water rapids. So there was always something weird going on down there, And then in the heat of the summer or the dead of the winter, that creek, its level would fall so low that you could walk over it. Might be 2 or 3 inches. Because it's a tributary off the sewer systems. I think they call it the non-kind of creek watershed. So I'm not sure if that thing was man-built or if it was always there. I'm not sure exactly.
Well, regardless, it sounds like a neat place to go explore to me. I don't blame you for doing that.
Oh, yeah. It's great for being a kid. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt.
Especially at the time because, we didn't have as much crime. We didn't have, there's always going to be creeps and people out there that want to take advantage of you and stuff. But you might be walking down the creek bed and you run into an ornithologist from the University of Memphis. He's just out there, studying birds and studying red-tailed hawks. Or you might run into a geologist out there looking for agates and crystals and quartz and stuff like that. So you never knew who you would run into out there.
Sounds like a neat area. When it was taunting you and the guys from outside the cave, did you ever hear it digging like it was trying to dig you out, or was it just moving around out there?
No, the thing I can remember that sticks in my head was the growling, which was a very deep growl, and branches breaking like it was intending for you to know it was there. Sticks, limbs, stuff like that, dry wood. And then it would get quiet, and then it'd show up on the other side of the entrance to the cave, and it'd start doing the same thing. And it was almost like it was 2 or 3 feet away from the entrance where you couldn't see it, but you dare not stick your head out of that hole because that was probably sheer death, right? That was sure death. So you could hear it, and it would be growling and moving around. And then you'd hear it on top of the cave, and you'd hear it, the leaves crackling and it walking around, breaking limbs and stuff like that and growling. And then you'd hear it on the other side. And so I just saw it that one time. John saw it twice, but John's not here to talk about it.
I can't remember if you told us last week, but how much do you think you weighed?
I've thought about this, and I thought about my perceptions of size and weight. I'm thinking at least 450 pounds. At least, if not 500. It was lean, but it was built.
If it weighed close to that much, I hope it didn't spend too much time directly above you, because that could have caused a cave-in.
Well, that's one thing. If you're going to do this, if you're going to dig a cave, dig under the root system of a tree, because at least you got that as a stabilizer. So that's kind of what we did. So I don't think it would have mattered because, that root system was extensive on top of the cliff side there that we were going into. And eventually, if you go down far enough, you're going to start hitting clay. But still, it's not a good idea for boys and girls to be out there doing this kind of thing.
No, it's not. If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Did you ever smell any strange scents down in that hole besides the pee in your buddy's pants?
If you're asking if I ever smelled, did he have a distinctive smell or anything? I never smelled anything. It was nothing skunk-like or wet dog-like or any of that stuff. No. It's weird.
Not trying to be funny, but I'm sure the scent of pee was pretty strong down in the Genesis room, though, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it probably did. Probably, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it did. But, actually, I didn't even smell that. I was not worried about it. I was not worried about the pee. I was not worried about the smell. I was not worried about any of that. I was like, I was too busy trying to wrap my head about what is this? Why are we being hunted? And I read a few comments. I haven't spent a lot of time on the last show's episode, but somebody said some funny things. It's like, it wasn't a Led Zeppelin fan. Okay, whoever said that, you're really, really funny. Okay, I like you. You're funny. And somebody else said something about when I was talking about it smiling. that it wasn't smiling, that it was growling at us or grimacing at us. And I was like, you know what? That makes total sense. It wasn't smiling. That thing was showing its teeth. It wasn't a smile.
I'm not so sure about that. It just might have been a smile. It's hard to say. Then again, I wasn't there. You were, so yeah, your judgment will be much better on that than mine would be. So
I can't remember the exact words they said, but they said it wasn't smile. It was a growl or a menacing posture, which would make sense, especially by the way that thing's head works. It looked like, you know how a snake has a interlocking jaw? You know how a snake can like unlock its jaw and make its jaw bigger? It looked like that. It looked like it could do that.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it is a very scary thought.
But like I've said before, these guys don't have any soft edges. Everything about them is pretty sharp and hard.
Yeah, definitely. And I am going to try to get back down there. I don't know. Sometimes I want to go, and then sometimes I think, what am I doing? And then there's also the question of the police, and there's people that live directly behind that, or, I guess it would be in front of that cave, where you don't want to get down there and just, have a whole bunch of cops show up and going, what are you doing down here? And then you got to go, well, when I was 13, there was this thing down here, and I wanted to come down here and see if it was still here. They're going to lock me up. So, yeah, there is that.
Yeah, hopefully that wouldn't happen.
Well, you got to sneak in, got to sneak out.
It's been so much time that's passed. How sure are you that that cave is still there?
Oh, the cave's not there. I know for a fact the cave's not there. There's probably no semblance of the cave after this time. I don't know if it was Dogman or a bunch of kids. I think it was a bunch of kids, because eventually when we finished those 2 rooms, well, 3, and the 2 hallways, we started going straight up. We did a vertical tunnel all the way to the top where we had a hatch that opened up, kind of like a missile silo or something like that. Of course, us being kids, we didn't know how to seal that properly. We should have had concrete and stuff around it, and we're using an old 50-gallon drum, not 50-gallon, but like 500-gallon drum or whatever, one of those old drums, and a hatch on the top. And I think that we had a bunch of younger kids that came around and left the top open, and when it started raining, it eventually washed out. Or it could have been Dogman. I mean, it's not like it wasn't locked or anything, but I know for a fact that the Memphis Police Department went down there several times and took pictures of it. They were just blown away that somebody actually did this.
I can understand why they would be impressed.
Either that or just freaked out. It's like, what in the world is this?
Well, yeah, that too. You said that you and your friends went straight to your house after you left the hole that morning when the sun came up. The closest house was just 50 feet away, but how far was your home from the cave?
As a crow flies, probably about 50 yards, but you got to walk through the woods to an open field and then go about another 100 yards to get to the house. So, we weren't about to go in the dark running through a whole bunch of brambles, especially when it's on that side and you can hear it flanking you. So we were trying to stay on the path, get to the edge of the woods, which we did, and then you hang a right, and it's about 100 yards. And these fields, this is where you're going to have power lines. So that's why it's a field. That's why nothing's built there, because it's TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority area, where they have power lines and structures like that, where they're running power through the neighborhood and through the community. I got a funny story about that too, by the way.
By all means, please tell us.
No. I mean, we were just destructive little kids when we were kids, and they started building those things. When they'd get done putting them together, we'd go out there and take them apart and just throw it in the creek.
Wow.
I know that's stupid. Yeah, just boys being boys. And they finally got to where they put locking nuts on the bolts and the nuts because we did it so much.
You guys were little miscreants.
Oh my God, you don't even know, Vic. If there was trouble to get in, we probably got in it.
I can only imagine. Did anything ever happen at your house that makes you think that it might have visited you at home?
Not that I can think of offhand, but there are plenty of things that happened on that creek where I'm pretty sure, looking back now, it was there. I made mention of the tree trunk shooting off the side of a cliff about 40 feet up and hitting the water, stuff like that. There were plenty of times where it would be a perfectly sunny and nice day, and you'd be down there just exploring, as children do, watching butterflies and having fun and exploring and doing the things you do when you're a child. And all of a sudden, this tremendous amount of somebody is watching me and I need to get out of here right now would come over you, just total terror. So you would hightail it, man. You would hightail it. You would run as fast as you could through those woods, jumping up and down creek beds, jumping up and down cliffs, being a dogman as much as you can be. And the funny thing is, you get to the edge of your backyard and you turn around and look, and all of a sudden that feeling's gone. Feeling's gone. You're like, you kind of think to yourself, what am I so scared about? There are plenty of times we were down there, or I was down there, even alone, and you get that overwhelming feeling that something is watching me, and this is not natural. I got to go. I got to go. So you'd go, and as soon as you'd hit the safety of your house or, civilization or whatever, and it would go away. There's a lot of things that doesn't make a lot of sense about this to me. And I'm pretty sure it was it. Because I think we're a lot like rabbits. I think we're a lot like food or something where, it's like if you're going to be hunted, you know you're being hunted. You instinctively know. Nobody has to tell you that something's out there that wants to eat you or kill you. So why is that? Why doesn't it eat you or kill you? And why does it have this instinctive nature to install that fear in you? When it can sit back and not be seen and not even let you know you're there, it's there. So why is that? Like I said, there's probably more questions than there are answers to this thing. Maybe one day.
Well, maybe one day, but I highly doubt that. But time will tell.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's still here. Like I said, it's been so long since I've been down there, but it could be. I think we were in its way, and it wanted us to go away. That's what I think. And I think that there's something about this thing that is capable, be it natural or supernatural, of installing fear in people. Or it could be, once again, we're the rabbits, it's the wolf, and that's just the nature of life. A rabbit's going to know when it's being hunted. It could be something so far off from, or it just could be instinctive, because that's the thing, too, is nobody wants to admit it that we are animals. Nobody wants to admit that humans are animals. But we are. We're part of this animal kingdom, just like a rat or a fish or anything else, So we have our place in this world, and we still have that evolutionary concept of hunt or be hunted or fear. So maybe it's just instinctive.
That might be what's behind it, but I think it's a little more entailed than that. But I could be wrong. What I'm about to say, Keith, I'm sure isn't going to come as a surprise to you, but unfortunately, there are people who have listened to last week's show who are convinced that because they would never go back out into the woods after you had that first encounter, that must mean that you're lying about that encounter because no one would do that. But in sales, there's a saying, and that saying is, you are not your customers. What that means is, just because you wouldn't buy something ever, that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who would. So the same thing holds true with your experience. Just because most people would never go back to those woods or any woods after having an encounter like the one that you had, that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who would go back into the woods multiple times. So you can't play that game. I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think my curiosity overrides my fear, if that makes any sense. The curiosity of this story really overrides my fear. And I'm definitely not making it up. So, see, and that's the thing that for us to sit down and talk about one specific encounter or a few encounters doesn't change the fact of how many times we were out there where nothing happened. So there was more times we were out there that nothing happened than happened. And it was a handful of times that things happened and the multitude of things that never happened. And that's your backyard too, when I was a kid. So for me, it's not only curiosity, it's also nostalgia. Because I grew up there.
Well, too, for some people, that would serve as a magnet, drawing them into the woods, so.
Yeah, but I can understand how anybody would say that. I mean, it's certainly not a pleasant experience. I mean, it's not, at least it wasn't. But I think at my age now, I can probably deal with it a little different. I wouldn't be completely fear-struck. Well, I might be. I don't know. I probably would be, for that matter. But I still want to find out. I think that's where the curiosity comes in with all of it.
If you do go back there, I hope you get some good answers and it helps you bring closure to all this.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would like to have answers for all of us. I'd like to sit down with this thing and have a cup of tea and play some chess, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so either.
There's something going on.
Oh, I'd say there is. When you'd feel the overwhelming sense of doom from time to time after the night you had that encounter, you said you didn't see it those times. Did that almost make those experiences worse than the time that you actually did see it?
I would say yes. Because what you're dealing with there is something that is the unknown. I mean, even if you're looking at something and you don't know what it is, you're still looking at it. Yeah. Yeah. But hearing it or feeling it is completely different than not seeing it and hearing it and knowing that it's there to terrify you.
Yeah, that does make it a lot different. You told us about that reoccurring nightmare that you had for about 20 years or so. How much trouble do you have present day dealing with that experience?
I don't. That nightmare lasted about 20 years, literally. But I haven't had that nightmare in a very long time. I wouldn't even, if I did, I wouldn't consider going back down there. So I'm trying to, I guess, in my own mind, put this somewhere behind me. And yeah, I think you're right. Have some closure and perhaps some understanding. More so with the knowledge I have now compared to what I did when I was a child or a young man, however you want to put it.
Well, maybe I'm old too, but I think 14 is definitely a kid. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Keith, but before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Absolutely, I do. I would like to say thank you again to you and the service you do to the community of cryptoids, especially Dogman. And I would also like to say thank you to all the people that came before me and gave me the courage to speak up about my experience. And I hope that I can inspire others to come out and speak about theirs. And I'd also like to say thank you to all the people that said some nice things about me in the comment sections. And I appreciate your humor and I appreciate all you guys. You're good folks. And if you ever want to look me up, all you got to do is look me up on Facebook, look up Gregory Keith Brooks. I have my dog who's passed but she's a pit bull and she's wearing a boonie hat. And then there's a picture of me wearing a University of Tennessee hat. And if you find that, you'll find me. So there can't be possibly too many guys named Gregory Keith Brooks from Memphis. And friend me, and we'll talk about it. And talk to Vic. Come on his show. He's a good guy. He's going to help you out because that's what he does more than anything. Not only document this stuff, but he also takes care of the people that come to him with these issues. And listen to him. And thank you again, Vic.
Well, you're welcome. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing that experience, number one, but especially for coming back tonight and answering all these questions. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, sir.
Thanks again so much for your time, and have a great night.